Well, good morning, everybody. Great to see everybody, especially after the last few weeks we've all been through with hurricanes and earthquakes if you were down in Mexico. Also, if you are new to our church, we just want to extend a special welcome to you. We definitely are a group that has not figured it all out, and we don't claim to, but we're just on this journey together. We found this amazing person named Jesus. And we believe that he is God's son in the flesh, and so we follow his teachings. At least we try to follow his teachings. We really do, but we're not perfect. But anyways, we're glad that you're here with us and enjoying some family time with us. I also want to say hi to those who are watching online. Great to have you guys here joining us from wherever, all over the States and in Canada as well. So great to have you here. Well, I don't know about you, but the last few weeks have been a little bit crazy with, of course, the Hurricane Harvey came through and messed up Texas. Then all the flooding in Houston that happened. Then we had, of course, Hurricane Irma, which felt like it took like a month to get here. You know, everybody talked about it for so long. For the Robbins family, that was like our second hurricane to experience coming through town. And so that put us without power and Wi-Fi for 3 days, which was our big cross to bear. But anyways, we got off light compared to many people. With just some really devastating situations, not just in South Florida, but then you look in the Caribbean islands and so much damage. And then Maria comes by. And so, I mean, what are you thinking if you are living on one of these islands besides I want to get out, right? It's just like, wow, can we get a break? You ever felt like that in life, where just like wave after wave of bad things? And these are big bad things, right? We didn't know if Maria was going to come this way. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, like hurricanes are kind of exciting when you first experience them. But I don't want to go through another 3 days of no Wi-Fi. So let's just pray extra hard that Maria doesn't come this way. And then, of course, the earthquake happens in Mexico. And it's almost like just bad news keeps compounding itself and kind of creates this mood when you just know that, wow, there's just a lot of suffering in our, region of the world right now. Then, of course, if you've been watching the news lately, then you are seeing the increased tension between North Korea and the rest of the world, especially the United States. And some of the rhetoric is honestly quite scary. Like, we've not heard this type of rhetoric from world leaders in I don't know how long, maybe back to the 1960s, where one nation says an attack on you guys is imminent. And you're just like, wow, really? And so we actually had a discussion around our family dinner table last night. And we talked about, well, what would we do if another nation fired a nuclear weapon? And then we kind of reasoned, like, we're in Florida. We're like the farthest point away, so we're probably safe. But we began to have that talk, like, well, what if something happened on the West Coast? And then we thought, well, we're going to move to Canada. That was our solution, right? Because no one is going to bomb Canada. I'm just going to tell you that. So, and then my daughter said, it's unbelievable that we're even having a conversation about what we might do if somebody drops a nuclear bomb or sends a nuclear missile our way. Isn't it crazy? I was hearing this morning, Ken Perry was telling me about his neighbor, and just before Hurricane Matthew last year, they had just built a brand new dock, and Matthew came, wiped it out. And so they rebuilt the dock, and Irma came and wiped out the dock. I think $25,000 each time you build a dock. And so what do you do now? Do you build another dock or not? I don't know, but wouldn't it be nice to know the future? Like, wouldn't it be nice to know ahead of time what's going to happen in your life? And so let me ask you this question. Does God know the future? So many of you are like, yes, he does. Okay, well, I'll agree with you on that. Does God know the future of your life? Like, does God know what's ahead for you in terms of your family? Does God know what's ahead for you in terms of your career and all that? Does he know that stuff? And so sometimes you might feel like, yes, he does. And other times you might think, well, I don't know, because don't I have choices in that? Or does God just know my choices? And you can get really bogged down in a really thick theological soup there. But of course, one thing you can try to do to attempt to find out your future is go to a psychic. And so I went to a psychic, and something she said is still haunting me. And I'm going to tell you what she said in probably about 15 minutes. But before I get to that, we're going to jump into the book of Mark, because for the last 4 months, guys, get this, for 4 months we have been studying the book of Mark. And get this, the book of Mark is the shortest gospel. And it's taken us 4 months, and even though the brothers have done an amazing job, we had some great guys up here preaching and teaching some amazing lessons. Every single guy who's been up here will tell you they didn't quite get to all of the chapter they were assigned to them. So we have taken the entire book of Mark, and we've covered it in 4 months, and basically the collective idea is, and we still didn't get really all of it. So that's where I love the Bible. It's so rich, it's so deep, you can never touch bottom. We could study the book of Mark for an entire year. We're not going to. We're going to close our series today. And we have been following this tale of Jesus. And the thing about the book of Mark is just, it's like everything condensed into the shortest possible form. And sometimes, to be honest, it's really hard to preach from the book of Mark because, a story that the book of Luke takes a whole chapter to do, Mark does it in like 5 sentences. And you're like, oh, but you're leaving out so much, right? But anyways, we have marched through Mark, and then last week, Bright was talking to us about the price that Jesus paid for us as he was punished, as he paid the price for our sins, and he ultimately died on the cross. And that's where our story left off last week, okay? And so what happened next is after he was taken off the cross, some really good-hearted guys grabbed his body, which back then, if you were crucified, you weren't even supposed to be buried. But they went and got permission to get the body, and so instead of it being thrown into the dump, they took the body of Jesus and they went and found a new tomb that one of the guys owned. And because the sun was just about to set, they had to hurry because when the sun set, the Sabbath would start. The Sabbath, by the way, was a holy day among the Jews. And on the Sabbath, you weren't allowed to work. You weren't allowed to touch dead bodies. You weren't allowed to do basically anything. You couldn't cook. I mean, it was a day where you shut down. You couldn't get money out of the ATM, nothing. And so the Sabbath was just about to start, and so they're getting the body prepared as good as 2 guys can do that, which guys usually don't do good wrapping anything. But anyways, they were working on wrapping the body. They get the stone rolled, and then, of course, the sun goes down. And then it's the Sabbath. I want you to imagine for a moment that you are amongst Jesus' early followers. And your world has basically just turned upside down. Not only has your close friend and mentor and teacher died, he was punished severely and killed horrifically, and you were powerless to do anything. In fact, for many of the guys still struggling with the guilt of actually deserting Jesus and watching all this happen. For the women that followed Jesus, equally crushing to see somebody that they loved because he loved them so much die. But then add to that, it wasn't just about a friend dying. It was about hopes, dreams, a future, aspirations. Yes, this can be a new world. Yes, we can have a new start. And all of a sudden, all of that was wiped out. Because somebody who came to save us from death shouldn't die. And then it was the Sabbath. I don't know about you, but whenever I've had to deal with bad news or really bad news, maybe somebody dying, I've never had to deal with news like they had to deal with that day. But what helps me to get through that is I get busy, right? Let's do something to distract yourself. Let's go work. Let's go hang out. Let's do stuff. These early disciples had to sit for the next 24 hours and do nothing. They couldn't go work. They couldn't go on a hike. They couldn't go appreciate nature because the Jews had it down to a science that you could only take so many steps. They were very legalistic about it. And so you were just stuck dealing with this awful, terrible news. And so apart from maybe playing trouble or plunk-o-matic, he's passed the time. Well, eventually, maybe one of the women, maybe Mary, she decides to text, another Mary and, hey, how you doing? What's up? And then they start texting each other and they start to figure out like, you know what? I bet the guys didn't do a very good job anointing the body. We should probably go back and do that. Hey, let's do that. And so they begin to hatch a plan because that's what women are just great at this, right? They're talking to each other. And so they decide that they're going to have this plan to go back go into the tomb and re-anoint the body. And as the sun is setting on the Sabbath, they see their opportunity that as soon as the sun sets and it's dark, you can go out of your house, and they're going to head to the night market and begin this thing. So let's pick this up in Mark chapter 1. When the Sabbath was over, so by the way, like that's sundown. As soon as sundown came, when the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, that's not James and John, and Salome, by the way, Salome is the mother of James and John, married to Zebedee. Remember the James and John in the boat? And so Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome, the mother of James and John, bought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. So, they would have met up, went out to the market at night or somebody's store. And, here's the thing. These women were on their way to a dead body. Like they weren't in the Hallmark section finding get well soon cards. They weren't in the other section in Hallmark that said, hey, welcome back. Great to have you back from the dead. Nobody was thinking that way. Because when somebody dies, they stay dead. It was no different in the first century as it is today. When someone dies here, we don't expect them to come back from the grave. It doesn't matter what they told us before. It doesn't matter if they told us, you know what, I'm going to raise from the dead 3 days later. Hey, that's great. I hope you do. But once you die, we know how this works. And so they go and they buy spices. And then it says very early, so they go back to bed. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb. And they asked each other, who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb? And I love this because it shows a little bit the duress in terms of what was going on for them mentally. You ever been just so filled with emotion or so preoccupied that you just ignore the obvious with your planning? Like I remember the day that I got a phone call from my sister that my dad had just had a stroke. And he was being airlifted to a hospital, and they were out on some island that he had to take like 2 boats to just get back to the mainland. And so my mom was having to take this van back. And so we were going to be into this communication silence for at least 5 to 6 hours. And so all I know is Dad had a massive stroke. They've airlifted him to the hospital. We don't know a thing. And now I just wait. So my son had to get to hockey practice, and so I'm like, okay, let's go. And I take him to practice, and then I come back, and I take my shoes off, and I look down, and I realize I had put on 2 different shoes, like shoes that don't match. Who does that? But in my tying of shoes, looking at 2 different shoes, it didn't even register, right? Because that's just where your mindset is. So anyways, these women, they're on their way to the tomb, and at some point, they just like, oh, wait a minute, we didn't even think who's going to roll the stone away? And right as they do this, a little bit of humor in the gospel here, but when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. And you may think like, oh, this is good news, but no, not really. Because there's a stone over the entrance for a reason. A couple of reasons. One is to keep the stench of a dead body in, and the other is to keep grave robbers out. And so for the fact that all of a sudden the stone has been rolled away to somebody that they love can only mean, oh my goodness, what has happened? Something has happened. And so they approach, it says, as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. So they come in, and who's sitting there? Who's the person in white? It's an angel. It's an angel. But he just looks like a guy. In fact, the scriptures teach us about angels. You can read in Hebrews 13, verse 2, it says that you should always entertain strangers, because by doing so, some have entertained angels and not even known about it. And so there's an angel, and he's sitting there, and the first thing he tells them is, listen, don't be alarmed, don't be scared. And then he says, don't be alarmed, he said, you are looking for Jesus the Nazarene who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. And in this one conversation, the history of our world changed. You know, in the earthquake relief, in the hurricane relief, you know who's going to be the majority of the people going in helping out? people who believe and follow the guy who rose from the dead. In fact, nothing has shaped our culture and our history more than what happened this moment. Because as they come in to see the dead body, and then he's not there, and an angel's there to help reorient them, and he just says simply, listen, you don't need to be afraid because he's risen. He's not here. Here meaning among the dead. And so I know you thought he died, and he did, but he's come back from the grave. How do you process that as a person? I think I'm going to initially process that with that denial, right? No way. There's no way. There has to be another explanation. But maybe before they could get to that, the angel then points them and he says, listen, but go tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee, and there you will see him just as he told you. And what's so amazing is this was not new. This was not new to them. They'd been told, they'd heard about this. Jesus had I don't want to say warned them, but he just given them a heads up. Listen, this is what's going to happen to me, and I'm going to get killed. But 3 days later, I'm going to come back from the grave. Okay, yeah, that sounds great, Jesus. Awesome. Where are we eating for lunch? Right? They just, continued to follow. And here's the angel saying, look, he's not here, but here's what you're supposed to do. You guys are supposed to go here, and there you will see him. And eventually, all of these women got to see Jesus face to face. Isn't that amazing? The entire book of Mark, we've been talking about how amazing Jesus is. In fact, that's one of the themes of Mark. It's just all the times where people were amazed at this. They were amazed at his teaching. These things were amazing because he is amazing. And Mark just condenses it down to how awesome Jesus is. But of all the things that he did, of all the miracles that he performed, nothing compares to this one. This is the most epic miracle of all time. To die on the cross for all of our sins, to be killed for that, and all of a sudden, to be raised, and people can see him again. It continues, trembling and bewildered. The women went out and fled. I love that. These three ladies running along through the rocky, the rocks and stuff, but they're just trying to get out of Dodge. They fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. And this, in our most ancient manuscripts, is where the book of Mark ends. Now, if you open your Bible, you're going to see that there's a verse 10 all the way up to a verse 19, and it continues to read in the story. Well, what I love about the Bible and what I love about the scholars in the Bible is that they're very open and transparent about the Bible. Like, in other words, no one's trying to pull one over on you in the Bible. And so you will see a little footnote in your Bible. Sometimes you'll even see a line after this. And then it says, the earliest manuscripts or ancient witnesses don't contain verses 9 through whatever. And that's because they don't contain verses 9 through whatever. And so what they think happened is that people looked at this in ancient times and be like, what? We're ending there? Like, all this great story about the amazing Jesus, and all of a sudden he dies, and then an angel's like, yeah, you're supposed to go over there, and that's where you're going to see him. And these women run out because they're afraid, and it's over? Like, was Mark writing under a deadline, and he had to get it turned in? Or was Mark just about to finish the next part, and then someone came for his life? Or did he die? Because we don't end stories there. We have to close the loops, right? There's so much but wait, did we see him? What's happening? And he just ends it. So much so that people felt compelled that they should add an ending to the story. And I'll leave it up to you to figure out how you feel about that ending and how much weight you want to put on that. But this is our earliest, by the way, there's two really ancient, reliable the most reliable text that we have about the Bible. One's called the Codex Sinaiticus, one called the Codex Vaticanus, and those are the earliest manuscripts that we have, and they don't have those extra verses. But my point isn't so much about that. My point is about, as the women left hearing good news, they were filled with fear. And why is that? Why were they afraid? Well, I think there could be a lot of different reasons, right? Because certainly it's not every day you talk to an angel. It's not every day that you go to the tomb and realize that, oh my goodness, my friend who was dead is not dead, or at least someone's saying he's dead, and what's happening? I think in a lot of ways there was a huge fear of the unknown and what's next. In a lot of ways, their life was about to become like the end of the book of Mark, a cliffhanger. You know, cliffhangers, you don't know what's going to happen next. But you know, your life, my life, our lives are a little bit like cliffhangers, right? Like, do you know what's going to happen tomorrow? Those of you who are single, do you know who you're going to marry? I know you're like, I know who I want to marry, but you know, do you know who you're going to marry? You know, those of you who just got married and you're thinking one day that you're going to have kids, you know, do you know that you're going to have kids? Those of you who have kids, you know that your kids are going to turn out to be okay? Well, I can answer that one for you, but of course they are. You know, teens, do you know that you're going to get into that school that you want to get into? Think about so many different unknowns that we have. And so what happens when we have unknowns in our life? How do we respond emotionally? How often do we respond? Especially if it's important to us. We worry. You ever worried about your future? Right? Juniors, you ever worry about that you won't get into college at all? Or you ever worry that, you know, you won't be accepted with your peers? You ever worry that you're going to become that person that all of a sudden becomes the outcast at school, which you see happen all the time? Right? College students, you ever worry that you're not going to get a solid job and get your loans paid off before you're 70? And again, singles, you ever worried that you're not going to meet somebody? Do you ever worry that you're going to stay single your whole life? Or parents, do you ever worry that something terrible might happen to one of your children? Health-wise or tragic accident, and does that ever flash through your mind? Or you watch a movie and you just think, oh my goodness, or you hear a story on the news of something that happened to a family, and do you ever go there and just think, oh, I don't know, I couldn't handle that? What about your retirement? Do you ever look at your bank account and your 401k? 401 not okay? Do you ever look at your 401 not okay? And do you ever have those moments where you sincerely are thinking, I'm going to come up short? Like, I'm going to be saying hello when you come into Walmart. Like, I am not going to have enough to retire. Ever worry about your kids making it to heaven? You ever worry about your kids coming back to faith? Maybe they've left. What about, I don't know, your parents? What about you and your own health? See, the key is for all of us is that there's so much of the future that we don't know. Close and dear friends of mine, just 6 weeks ago, Guy and Kathy Hammond up in Toronto. Kathy's just feeling some weird things. They decide to go in and get a scan. And all of a sudden, their world gets turned upside down. You've got brain cancer. You have 12 months to live. And it's just like, oh my goodness. But that's not supposed to happen to good people. So whether it's extreme things like that or just small worries that we carry out the day, another word for worry that we usually don't like to attach to it is it's just another word for fear. When we're worried about something, we're afraid of something. There's a stress that's involved in our life. Worried that your marriage isn't going to make it. You're afraid of something. Think about this. Every worry, there's a fear behind it. And sometimes it's good to get in touch with that. Like, well, what is it that I'm afraid of? What if I don't get married? What am I afraid of? What is that thing? Well, what if something does happen that's terrible to one of my children? What am I afraid of? What is that? And so what happens in our life is we want to know what if we just could know though, because then I could prepare myself. And this is one of the reasons why we worry. It's kind of our subtle way of controlling our environment. And this is why some people go to a psychic. And so let me tell you about when I went to a psychic, because and this was 30 years ago, by the way. For those of you who've been like judging me for the last 30 minutes, I hope you feel guilty. Yes. So, anyways, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands of who's been to a psychic here, but let me ask this: who's been tempted to go to a psychic and find out about their future? Okay, all right, 4 of us. Okay. Well, we've just created a new club of sinners, so we'll meet next Sunday morning, all 4 of us. Pray for us. But anyways, for the 4 of us who are really spiritually minded and, want to know about those things, I went to the psychic because I was in my 20s and I was like a college student, and I wanted to know, what's in my future. I want to know who I'm going to marry and all that kind of stuff. And I knew enough about the Bible that the Bible did say something about don't consult mediums and mystics and that kind of stuff. But I just conveniently forgot that for a while, and I went in, and I can't remember. It's, Madam something. Psychics are always women, by the way. I'm not sure why. But anyways, I go in there, beaded curtain and everything, and she begins telling me about my life. And I only remember 2 things of what she said. Literally 2 things. One is she said, I see you living beside a large body of water. That's true. Yeah, I'm in Florida. 90% of the world lives beside a large body of water. But anyways, there I am. And she does this whole reading for me. And then I'm like, okay, thank you. Here's my money. She's like, dumb sucker. And then I'm walking out, and I'm literally just about at her beaded entrance. And then she says, oh, I just felt something. I just had a vision of a car battery exploding in your face. Be careful. Thanks. And I walk out, and honest to goodness, even 2 weeks ago, I had to jump my daughter's car because the battery had died. You know whose voice is in the back of my head? For 30 years. And so if I don't have glasses on, I go get like safety glasses on, just in case she's right? So far there's been no exploding batteries. But it's that point, like, why do we do that? Because I want to know the future, because if I know the future, I can control it. If a battery really is going to explode in my face, I want to know that so I can be prepared. Because that's the thing. We want to be prepared for our future. Because if I'm prepared, guess what? I can handle it. But here's the message that I want to get across to you today, is that even though God does know your days ahead for you, and He knows the high times and He knows the low times, and He knows He knows the great victories, and He knows the devastation moments that are still in all of our future. We all will have those relative to our life. And the message to all of us is still comes back to this. You don't need to be afraid. And that's what the angel said to them that day. Listen, don't be alarmed. You don't need to be scared about this life anymore, because the one who's conquered death is going to be with you, and He'll be with you through everything. And that doesn't mean that bad things won't happen, but when they do happen, He will be right there, and He will give you everything that you need to get through it. And this is the lesson that's been hard for me, if I'm honest, over the last year. Trying to step out, live more on faith, and then going, okay, God, I'm stepping out, but I thought we were going to meet halfway here. And there are times where God will let things go to the 11th hour and 59th minute, I believe, to make you really evaluate, what do you believe about God and His providence in your life? And is He really going to come through for you? And you're always forced with a decision of how you're going to live. And so in Matthew chapter 6, there's a sermon that Jesus was teaching. And He was teaching about this whole concept of being afraid and living in fear. But He used the word worry. And He told all these people who were there who probably had very similar worries to us, just manifested in a different way. And our worry is, am I going to be okay? Because when bad things happen, let's say I don't meet Mr. Right or Mrs. Right. Let's say something does bad happen to my kids. Let's say I don't have enough money for my retirement. Then we want to know, will I survive that? And what Jesus is saying, regardless of what happens in your life, you're going to be just fine because I'm going to be with you. And I conquered death, and I'm going to help you do the same. So even if there is something to be afraid of, you don't need to be afraid. And in Matthew 6, he's preaching this sermon, and he's telling them about, listen, I don't want you to worry about your life. I don't want you to worry about what you're going to wear. I don't want you to worry about whether you're going to eat or not. I don't want you to worry whether a hurricane's going to wipe out your house. I don't want you to worry whether you're going to be single for the rest of your life or not. I don't want you to worry about whether you're going to get into school or not. Sure, study hard, get good grades, do well on the SAT, right? You got to do your part, but I don't want you to worry about it. I don't want you to worry about whether you're going to have enough for retirement. Yes, be diligent. Yes, save. Yes, spend less money. Do the things you need to do. But I don't want you to worry about whether you'll be able to handle whatever those situations are. Because even if there's things to be afraid of, you don't need to be afraid. And right after that, he closes that lesson out with this verse in Matthew 6. And he says simply this, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. And he directs us. He directs us back to, listen, put God first in your life. And so those times when you feel disappointed, those times when you're worried and you're wondering, is God going to come through here? And am I going to be okay? And why are these bad things happening in my life right now? Jesus says, you know what? Just fix your eyes back on Jesus, back on God, and say, I'm going to seek him first again. Because when we worry, we tend to try and fix everything in our life. And he's like, no, just come back to me. Just come back to me. Just come back to me. And he says, if you just keep coming back to me, you're going to be okay. We're going to transition and take communion. And so I'm going to dismiss the ushers and ask you to go and get that ready for us. Thank you, by the way. The book of Mark, first of all, I hope you've enjoyed the study of it. It's been a while since we just grabbed a book like that and just went through it chapter by chapter. And it's been some really awesome stuff that we've learned. But the whole book of Mark it's about Jesus and how amazing he is. And there's been things to be impressed all through chapters 1 to 14. But 15 and 16, wow. He's whipped, he's beaten, he dies on the cross being mocked. And then Sunday comes. And he's not in the tomb. And he raises from the tomb, and the message to us is, I conquered death, and I'll help you too. Oh, and the other stuff, all the other stuff in your life, don't worry about that. Just stick close to me. Let's go ahead and pray as we get ready for communion. Our Father in heaven, thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much for all that you've done. God, it's been great to just look at Jesus, and there are so many reasons that we call him Lord. And Father, we're so grateful for the sacrifice that was made for each of us. And as we take communion now, God, I ask that all of us will reflect on our lives and take a look at where is it that we're worrying? Where is it where we're not trusting your providence? Where is it where we're worrying that you won't sustain us? Where is it where we're worrying that you might not come through for us in our way? And if you don't come through in our way, will we be able to handle that? I just pray, Father, we can shine a light on that area of our life. And just once again, surrender that back over to you to know that all is good and that we can seek first you, your kingdom, and your righteousness. Thank you for Jesus and what he's done for us, that we can walk out of here light, free from the burden of worry, and really, really live joyful, faithful lives. It's in his name we pray. Amen.